physical anatomy. You might wonder why we are studying the human skeleton and muscular system so extensively in a theater class. But especially for voice and movement work, the more you understand about the way that your body functions, the way that it operates in space, the better control you're going to have over it. If what we are looking for is a goal of releasing excess tension to be able to choose and make choices for characters, we need to understand where we are at our center. Where do our bodies naturally live? So what I want you to do is to do a mental picture of what a human skeleton looks like. Think specifically. Do a quick sketch of it. Yes, really actually do this. Draw a quick sketch of a skeleton. Pause the recording while you do that, and then join me again. I'm not exactly sure why this has been turned sideways for this particular recording, but what I want you to notice is first of all, take a look and see what is different from your sketch that you made. Notice things that you had wrong, things you added, things you left out, etc. And I want you to look at and notice how complex the skeletal system is. It is so ingeniously and perfectly designed to support our weight without even having to think about it. The way that the feet distribute the weight going up through the lower leg and across the knee and up through the femur and through the pelvic girdle all the way up. Our bodies are really, really well designed, but a lot of times we get in the way of that design, and that's what we're trying to help you get back to. So the spine, everything originates from the spine. The spine is the key to release of excess tension. One of the first things I want you to notice are the curves. Look at this. This is the side view. Look at these gorgeous, beautiful curves. A lot of times we tend to think of the spine as being completely straight. We think of, if the head's up here, we think of the spine as going down here, and then our legs are down here. That's a beautiful drawing, isn't it? So we think of the spine as being straight up and down, but it's not. These beautiful curves, which are there for a reason. There are three distinct sort of sections of the spine. We have the cervical vertebra up here, which are in the neck, the thoracic vertebra here, and this is what all of the ribs attach to. Is these 12 right here. Then we have the lumbar vertebra down here, and there's 5 of those. And then this is the sacrum, this sort of triangular shaped bone at the bottom going into the coccyx or the tailbone. Notice the differences between the different types of vertebra. In these cervical vertebra, they're a lot thinner, they're a lot smaller, and part of this is because you need to have a lot more flexibility in what your neck does. Right? You need to be able to bend it and twist it and turn it. And then notice how thick the lumbar vertebra are. That's because they are weight-bearing. These are your weight-bearing vertebra, and so they need to be thicker. Think about the foundation of a building. And then we're going to look at the skull. Notice that it's not just a round ball, right? We tend to think of the skull as like a bowling ball. But if you notice, the jaw sort of hangs off here, right? The spine ends all the way up here. The spine ends behind the nose. So a lot of times we tend to think of the spine as ending sort of at the base of the neck, but really it goes all the way up into the skull, right? Sort of into this balancing area right there. That's a view from below. So think of your skull as just balancing on the top of your spine, kind of like a bobblehead in a car, right? The other thing is I want you to think of the jaw as being just another appendage. It just kind of hangs off of the skull. Okay? If you think of it as being another appendage, then that allows you the chance to think about the jaw as not being completely cemented into the skull. The rib cage, the beautiful, beautiful rib cage, which protect our heart and lungs. Notice that they are not concentric rings that are parallel to the floor, okay? I want you to look from the front view here. They curve up and in, right? In the back, they curve and then they go down and around. This is a view from up top, and they, in the back, this is the vertebra, and they curve in, attached to the sternum, and curve in and attach to the sternum. So a lot of times we think of the ribs as sort of being these concentric rings that are parallel to the ground, and they're really not. Notice how they fit into the sternum in the front, and they fit into the vertebra in the back. And what they do is, I want you to think of them as sort of swinging open like the handle to a paint can. That's how the ribs swing up and open, right? Now, I also want you to notice we have these two beautiful floating ribs back here that do not attach to the sternum in the front, right? And that's important because this allows more lung capacity where the lungs are the biggest, which is at the bottom. The lungs are inside here, and the lungs are the biggest at the bottom. So those floating ribs are important. Looking at the shoulder and arm, the scapula, the shoulder blade, is not glued to the rib cage. Look at that. You can see from this above view that it kind of glides on top of the rib cage. So think of your scapula as wings, okay? And think about your arm as having 4 joints. It's easy to think about the wrist and the elbow and the shoulder, but then also think about where the collarbone goes into the sternum, because that's part of it too, this joint right in here, okay? So taking a look at the pelvis, you can see why we call it the pelvic bowl. The pelvic bowl. You can see it's a lot higher in the back than it is in the front, right? And also, one of the things I want you to notice is notice how the femur fits into the hip socket, okay? A lot of times we think of the femur, the thigh bone, as sort of going straight up into the pelvic socket, but it's not. It goes out to the side, and then the head of the femur fits into it there. And this is important, again, just so that we understand the way that our bodies function, okay? And there's just all kinds of very intricate layers of muscle that go through the muscular system. Notice deep, deep layers. There are just layers and layers and layers of muscle that are all intertwined. There are some groups of muscles that are for flexing, some that are for extension. They work in pairs. So like the bicep will contract to lift the arm up, and then the tricep will contract to move it back down, okay? And everything is interconnected, which is great most of the time, but then it also means that if you're carrying tension in one area, it travels into another one. The head and neck, look at all of these little tiny intricate muscles that are all intertwined. And look at all the muscles of the face. That's why our faces can be so expressive, because there are all these different muscles that are doing that. And also realize that the neck muscles go halfway down the back, and they extend all the way up into the back of the skull. So when we're stretching our neck muscles, we need to make sure that we're thinking fully. So look at the back here, the back of the torso. So again, we have the trapezius, which goes halfway up the back of the skull, and it goes out across to the tips of the shoulders, and then it extends down halfway down the back. So the neck muscles really extend from halfway up the skull to halfway down the back, right? And then again, notice how everything is intertwined, and look at all of the very, very intricate different muscles that are used to move the spine. We have to be able to move this, bend forwards and backwards and sideways, and to twist. So there's all sorts of different muscles that are all responsible for that. And then the torso from the front. Again, look at these muscles that we have in between the ribs. They are called intercostals. And a lot of times we don't necessarily think of these as being flexible muscles because they are very short. They go up and down, like if here's a rib and here's a rib, the intercostals go up and down like this. But they can be stretched. They can gain flexibility. So when you're stretching, getting ready for a show as part of your warm-up, you want to make sure that you are doing something that is going to stretch out those intercostals, okay? And then also notice that there are muscles that go in between the scapula and the ribs. They are not glued together. So, conclusions. The more we understand about our bodies, the more control we have over our bodies, which means the more release we can have from excess tension and the more choices we have as performers. And also remember that everything is very interconnected. This is usually a wonderful thing, but then it also means like if you tweak your knee, you might end up with back pain because your body's compensating. So it means that we just need to be careful and try to get out of our body's way and let our bodies function the way that they want to function.